Welcome to Neurovale. Sometimes the people who seem to hate you the most are not reacting to you at all. They are reacting to the parts of themselves they refuse to face. Have you ever felt the sudden chill in a conversation? Someone's tone shifts, their smile fades, or they start avoiding you for no reason you can identify. You did not insult them. You did not compete. You did not betray them. Yet somehow you became the target of coldness or resentment. Most advice will tell you to ignore it, assume jealousy, or try to be nicer. That is only part of the story, and it misses the deeper truth. The reality is uncomfortable but freeing. People rarely hate you for who you are. They hate the truths your presence awakens in them. Your calm might highlight their inner chaos. Your focus might make them feel stagnant. Your honesty might remind them of the compromises they have made to survive. You exist without performing, and that quiet existence forces them to confront parts of themselves they have buried or avoided. Hatred often masquerades as judgment or annoyance, but it is really a defense mechanism. Their brain protects the ego by projecting discomfort outward instead of facing it inward. That is why dislike often seems random and unearned. It is not personal, even though it feels that way. In this discussion, we will uncover 5 reasons people hate you for no reason. These reasons go beyond jealousy or conflict. They are rooted in psychology, self-reflection, and uncomfortable truths. Understanding them will help you stop internalizing negativity, stop shrinking to make others comfortable, and finally see that their reaction says more about them than it does about you. Let's dive in deeper. Number 1, your presence disrupts people's self-image. Your presence can disturb people in ways they do not fully understand. Not because you are loud, not because you are trying to prove anything, but because you quietly change how they see themselves. Think about this. You walk into a room and you are calm. You are comfortable in your own skin. You are not seeking approval. You are not nervous. You are not shrinking. You are just there. For someone who is constantly fighting self-doubt, that kind of calm feels uncomfortable. It creates a silent comparison they did not ask for. Most people carry a carefully managed picture of who they think they are. Confident enough, in control enough, doing fine. When someone like you appears, that picture starts to crack. Suddenly they notice their insecurity, their rushed thoughts, their need to impress. Nothing changed in the room except you, yet something inside them feels exposed. Here is where the mind steps in to protect the ego. Instead of saying something is wrong with me, the brain looks for an outside cause. You become that cause. Not because you did anything wrong, but because blaming you is easier than facing an uncomfortable truth. You see this at work all the time. A colleague who stays focused and unbothered during chaos is often labeled as arrogant or distant, not because they are, but because their composure highlights everyone else's panic. Or think of a friend who suddenly grows cold when you start becoming more confident. You did not change toward them. You just changed toward yourself. This is why some people become irritated by your silence, your discipline, or your boundaries. Your presence holds up a mirror they did not agree to look into, and mirrors make people defensive. Understanding this shifts everything. You stop chasing explanations. You stop trying to shrink to make others comfortable. You realize that not all discomfort is caused by harm. Some discomfort is caused by truth. When people react negatively to your presence, it is often not about you at all. It is about the version of themselves they can no longer ignore when you are around. Number 2, you trigger comparison without competing. You can make people uncomfortable without ever trying to outdo them. You do not have to compete, brag, or show off. Sometimes, simply living your life with focus and direction is enough to trigger something in others. Most people compare themselves constantly, even when they pretend they do not. They measure progress, status, confidence, and momentum in quiet ways. When you walk into their space moving steadily, not rushing, not seeking attention, it creates an unspoken contrast. You become a reference point they did not choose. The key thing here is that you are not competing. You are not racing anyone. You are not trying to be better. You are just being consistent with yourself. But consistency exposes gaps, and gaps are uncomfortable. Think of a friend who has talked about starting a business or going back to school for years. Then one day you casually mention that you finally started something you had been planning. You did not announce it dramatically, you did not lecture them. Yet their energy shifts. They become distant. They start making small comments that sound like jokes, but carry weight. What changed was not your behavior. It was their reflection. Your existence becomes proof that movement is possible. And when people feel stuck, proof feels like pressure. This is why some people accuse you of thinking you are better than them when you never said anything like that. It is projection. They feel behind, so they assume you must feel ahead. They feel replaceable, so they imagine you see them that way too. Even in workplaces, this shows up clearly. The person who quietly improves their skills often attracts resentment, not respect. Not because they demanded recognition, but because their growth highlights who has been coasting. Here is the deeper truth. People do not resent your success as much as they resent their own delay. Your presence simply reminds them of it. Once you understand this, you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop dimming your progress. You stop apologizing for moving forward. You realize that growth will always make someone uncomfortable, even when you are not competing at all. Sometimes the strongest reaction you trigger is not rivalry. It is a silent confrontation with time wasted and chances avoided. Number 3, you don't play victim or hero. You don't seek sympathy and you don't rescue others. Many people build their identity around roles, not talents, not values. Roles. Two of the most common are the victim and the hero. One gains meaning through sympathy, the other gains meaning through rescue. When you refuse both, it quietly unsettles people. You do not complain loudly about your struggles. You do not turn every setback into a story that asks for comfort. At the same time, you do not rush in to fix everyone else's problems or make yourself useful at the cost of your own peace. You handle your life without putting on a performance. That is rare, and it confuses people. Some feel uncomfortable because they rely on sympathy to feel seen. When you share pain without dramatizing it, or when you do not share it at all, they feel like their own suffering no longer stands out. They might even accuse you of being cold or detached, when in truth you just do not need an audience to survive. Others feel unsettled because they rely on being needed. They step in, give advice no one asked for, and rescue people to feel important. When you do not need saving, you remove their purpose. You deny them the emotional reward they expect. Instead of reflecting on why that bothers them, they turn the discomfort into resentment. You see this in families often. One person quietly takes responsibility for their life. They do not complain. They do not depend. Suddenly they are labeled distant or proud, not because they changed, but because they stopped playing a role that made others feel useful or superior. At work, this can be even clearer. You solve your problems without escalating them. You do your job without seeking praise or creating drama. Some colleagues admire it. Others feel invisible next to it. Here is the deeper wisdom. Many people do not want equality. They want emotional leverage. They want to either be needed or be comforted. When you stand in the middle, self-sufficient and grounded, you disrupt that balance. You remind people that meaning does not have to come from suffering or saving. It can come from responsibility and self-respect. And for those who have built their identity around emotional roles, that reminder feels threatening. So the resentment you face is not about lack of empathy. It is about you choosing wholeness over performance. Number 4, you reflect qualities they buried to survive. Most people are not living as their full selves. They are living as versions that helped them survive. Somewhere along the way, they learned what to hide, what to soften, and what to silence in order to be accepted. Over time, that shrinking becomes normal. They forget it was a choice. Then they meet someone like you. You speak honestly without forcing it. You move through life without constantly adjusting to please the room. You are not reckless or loud. You are simply real. That kind of authenticity has a strange effect on people who had to bury parts of themselves to fit in. It wakes something up. They might not know what it is at first. They just feel uneasy, irritated, restless. Being around you reminds them of who they used to be before they learned to hide their opinions, dull their creativity, or silence their instincts. You are not judging them, but your existence feels like a question they never answered. Think of someone who once loved art, music, or deep conversation, but gave it up to be practical and accepted. When they see you still expressing yourself freely, it touches a quiet grief. Not anger at you, but sadness about themselves. Since facing that sadness is hard, the mind looks for an easier outlet. Resentment. This is why some people say you are too much, too intense or unrealistic. They are not describing you. They are defending the compromises they made. Your freedom makes their sacrifice feel visible. You see this in workplaces, friendships, and even families. The person who stayed true to themselves is often labeled rebellious or difficult, not because they cause harm, but because they break the illusion that everyone had no choice. Here is the deeper truth. When someone reacts strongly to your authenticity, it is often because it reminds them of a version of themselves they had to abandon to feel safe. You represent a path they believe they can no longer take. Understanding this gives you peace. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to soften who you are. You realize that your authenticity is not an attack. It is simply a mirror. And not everyone is ready to see what they left behind when they chose to survive instead of live. Number 5, you violate unspoken social contracts. Many relationships run on silent agreements. Most relationships are not built on honesty. They are built on quiet agreements no one ever says out loud. Agree to complain together. Agree to downplay ambition. Agree to act confident while secretly insecure. These deals make people feel safe because everyone is playing the same game. The trouble starts when you refuse to play. You do not fake confidence just to fit in, but you also do not hide your self-doubt to bond. You do not sit around tearing others down to feel close. You do not complain just to belong. You stay real even when being real makes the room uncomfortable. That breaks the system. Imagine a group of co-workers who connect by constantly talking about how much they hate their job. It is not about solving anything. It is about shared frustration. Then you come in, do your work, and do not join the complaining. You are not judging them. You are not acting superior. You are just not participating. Suddenly you feel distant to them, even suspicious, or think of a friend group that bonds over insecurity. Everyone jokes about being bad at life, bad at relationships, bad at discipline. It creates emotional equality. When you stop making those jokes and start taking yourself seriously, the balance shifts. You did not change the rules out loud, but you broke them. People often call this confidence, arrogance, or emotional distance. In reality, it is discomfort. You are no longer reinforcing the story that keeps everyone comfortable. These unspoken contracts are powerful because they protect people from growth. If everyone agrees to stay small together, no one has to face their potential. When you step outside that agreement, you become a reminder that the contract was optional. Here is the part that hurts. People rarely admit this. Instead, they label you difficult, boring, or disconnected. They turn you into the problem so they do not have to question the system. Understanding this saves you from self-doubt. You realize that some rejection is not personal. It is structural. You change the pattern by being honest. When you violate unspoken social contracts, you are not attacking anyone. You are simply choosing not to pretend. And for people who depend on shared illusions to feel safe, that choice feels like betrayal. Number 6, you expose their fake kindness. Some people are only kind to those beneath them. Not all kindness is real. Some of it is conditional. It only exists when someone feels needed, superior, or emotionally above you. As long as you stay in that position, the warmth stays. The moment you no longer need them, everything changes. These are the people who like helping more than they like respecting. They offer advice you did not ask for. They give support that quietly reminds you of their importance. Their kindness is a way to secure status, not connection. When you stand on your own, you remove that advantage. You handle your problems without leaning on them. You make decisions without checking for approval. You grow without needing guidance. Suddenly the tone shifts. The same person who once seemed generous now feels distant or critical, not because you became ungrateful, but because you became equal. Think of a friend who was always there when you were struggling. They listened, helped, and showed up. But when your life stabilized and you no longer needed that help, their interest faded. They might even make subtle comments about you changing or becoming proud. What really changed was the power dynamic. This kind of kindness depends on imbalance. It needs someone to be below so someone else can feel above. When that structure disappears, so does the warmth. You see this in families, workplaces, and friendships. The relative who enjoys giving advice loses interest when you stop asking. The coworker who liked mentoring you becomes irritated when you no longer need direction. The support was never about you growing. It was about them feeling necessary. Here is the deeper truth. Real kindness survives equality. Fake kindness does not. When people resent you for no longer needing them, it reveals that their generosity had conditions attached. You did not betray them. You simply outgrew the role that made them feel important. Understanding this frees you from guilt. You stop shrinking to protect someone else's ego. You stop pretending to need help you no longer need. You realize that independence does not make you cold. It makes you honest. And honesty has a way of exposing who was being kind out of care and who was being kind for control. In final words, people rarely hate you for what you do. They hate you for what you make them see about themselves. By now it should be clear that most dislike is never really about you. It is about the reflection you hold up for others. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your consistency exposes their delay. Your authenticity exposes their compromises. Your independence exposes their need. And your unpredictability exposes the illusion of control they have built around themselves. This is why hatred often seems random or unfair. You did not insult anyone. You did not compete or attack. You simply lived honestly, and that made others uncomfortable. The mind resists facing truths it cannot change. When reflection is too painful, resentment becomes the shortcut. People project their inner struggles onto you, turning discomfort into blame. Understanding this changes everything. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for living with clarity, discipline, and boundaries. You stop feeling guilty for handling your life privately, for refusing roles that were never yours to play, and for being unpredictable in a world that craves control. The reality is brutal, but freeing. Hatred often says more about the other person than it does about you. It is not a verdict on your worth. It is a mirror of unresolved fears, insecurities, and regrets. When you truly understand this, you stop chasing approval. You stop explaining your choices. You accept that some discomfort is inevitable when you refuse to compromise your self-respect. And in that acceptance, you finally reclaim the peace that others' resentment can never take from you. Living honestly is never safe. It is always worth it.